welcome to another episode of Talking with Dr. T, where we converse about bridging the gap between faith and mental health, where we bridge the gap between biblical foundations, theological foundations, psychological, and counseling theories. And I am just honored to be here for another episode for our monthly series in August. Hopefully you all got a chance to watch last month's episode with Reverend Dr. Larry Anderson and the women who were part of the Pastor's Wives Diaries. I'm excited for our show tonight, and I'm excited for our upcoming shows. But tonight I have Pastor Tisha Dixon-Williams from First Baptist Church of Bridgehampton in New York. She is my friend. She is my sister. We met virtually during the pandemic, where we collaborated on bridging the gap between faith and mental health. She is not a stranger to Talking with Dr. T. She was on in 2021 where she talked about emotional intelligence with pastors. So if you're interested in that show, please go back and look at an episode from 2021. But she is no stranger tonight, and we are going to talk about bridging the gap between faith and mental health. So without further ado, please welcome my sister, Pastor Tisha Dixon-Williams.
Hello, Dr. T. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be on and be in conversation with you once again. It's always a joy anytime someone invites you on a platform, because you have a choice of who you want at your party. So I don't take it for granted that you chose me. And thank you, my friend.
Thank you. And I chose you because over the years, we have really collaborated on this idea of faith and mental health, but for both of us as Black women, for both of us in the ministry. And so I am just excited to have you here. And, you know, people can go and they can read your bio on the church website, but could you provide us just a brief overview of who you are and let the audience know who you are tonight?
So I am Tisha Dixon-Williams, youngest daughter of Edward Dixon and Muriel Dixon, a daughter and a descendant of Sapelo Island, Georgia. I am also a Brooklyn girl. I'm just as comfortable on a Brooklyn stoop as I am on a Georgia porch. I am a lover of all things art, all things history, all things creative, all things pop culture. I'm a pastor, I'm a preacher, I'm a wife. I'm the wife of Deacon Larry Williams. I am an auntie, I'm a tia, I'm an author, an innovator, a trailblazer, all of those wonderful things. And I'm an all-round dope chick.
Absolutely, you are. Thank you so much. And you know what I appreciate? When we were planning for the show tonight, my theme was the pastor as a person, the pastor as a shepherd. And so I really appreciate you sharing who you are personally as well, and how that contributes to what you do in ministry. Oh, sure. So when we first met and you presented at seminary on Sundays on emotional intelligence, but I learned about your ministry, Who's That Lady? Yeah. So can you tell us a little bit more about the Who's That Lady ministry?
Yes. So Who's That Lady is a global women's ministry movement that spans from, it was birthed in New York and it spans all the way to Uganda. It started as a monthly Bible study series. And it's called Who's That Lady because I wanted to explore the lesser known women of the Bible. There's so many women that we know, but there's so many women that we don't know, or even the women that we know, their stories are often not unpacked sufficiently. And so we only know a little bit. And so I named it Who's That Lady because I wanted the women in the church that I was serving in at that time to be poured into in a different way, to see and show that our stories are all connected, that there really is nothing new under the sun, and that the same God that redeemed the women of the Bible is the same God that can redeem us. And so that's how Who's That Lady was born. What I did not know when I started it in 2016 was that it would morph into this huge global ministry movement. I had no idea. It was just supposed to be a Bible study, but it has since become books and conferences and retreats and just a lot of inspiration. I was looking at a post the other day where it talked about all of these famous name brands and what we think they sell versus what they really sell. And so, for example, it's and I hope I don't get this wrong, I'm probably misquoting, but for example, Ford doesn't sell cars, they sell transportation. McDonald's doesn't sell burgers, they sell happiness. Disney World doesn't sell parks, they sell memories. And it caused me to think about who's that lady and what it is. I don't sell anything, but what it is that I want people to walk away with. And so if you think about who's that lady, you think about retreats, you think about Bible study. And while those are the vehicles we use, what we do is we brand inspiration. That's what the ministry is. We are inspiration. I want every woman, every person who comes in contact with the ministry to feel more inspired to be their authentic and true selves.
Yes. So, and I love this. And talk about, just the women in the Bible and what that means for us as women today. I don't want our male audience and our listeners to say, well, this doesn't pertain to me. So how could this also help the men and the males in our congregation and in our communities?
Well, it's so interesting because most men start out that way. And then they'll hear something or see something like, oh, no, this is for me, too. And I'm very clear that the stories I present and the people that I talk about, we can see ourselves in them, whether male, female, men, or women. But what's interesting about all of those women's stories is they're usually couched in a male dominated story. So that's one thing I say when I teach Who's That Lady lessons. It's very difficult for me to highlight the woman in this text without talking about the men that surround her story or that are in the story. And so it really is for everybody. And I do joke with spouses and partners and husbands a lot. And I was like, well, I'm really helping you guys because sometimes, if you want the house to yourself, send her to Morocco with me.
Yes. Well, let's talk about Morocco. Yeah, let's talk about Morocco. Tell us a little bit more about Morocco, and this will really lead into some of our discussion later on. But you have a retreat that you take women to Morocco.
I do, and I love it. So it was inspired by one of my really dear friends who moved. She basically expatriated to Morocco during COVID. And long story short, after a couple of years, she actually started her own property, just purchased her own property. But before that, she was like, I really think you would love it here. You need to come here. Just come. I think your women would love it. Just come check it out by yourself. And I did. And I fell in love. And I always knew it, because it was on it was like in the top 2 of my places that I wanted to visit. And so I always knew Morocco would appeal to me. Somewhere in my heart, I always knew. And so I got there, fell in love with it. And I was like, yes, indeed, women need to come here. People need to come here. So I don't just bring women. I do about 3 different trips. I do one called Healing for Healers, which is a trip for pastors. It's a unisex trip. Anyone can come. And then I do something called Soukin is a Verb. That's the fun trip. That's all we do is shop for 5 days.
I love it.
In the Moroccan souk. And so each day we go out, we shop until we drop, come back, eat, have a good time, and go back out the next day. So that's the fun trip. And then there's the Who's That Lady retreat. And the Who's That Lady retreat is designed for women to come, enjoy, restore. It is also a fun trip. I tell people this is not the kumbaya trip. This is we're letting our hair down, having a good time. Woosah. We do work. We do a little bit of work. We do cry, and we do laugh, and we dance, and we eat well. And we just do all the things that we should be doing to make ourselves feel good. And so,
Yeah, I love that. And, you talk about feeling good and woosah and healing the healers and for the women. So tell me a little bit about your vision, your philosophy about the role of the church, both inside the mortar brick wall and outside the mortar brick wall, as it relates to wholeness, wellness, and mental health.
Yeah. So that's one of the things I like to think that I am as a pastor. I like to think that I speak to the whole person. I try not to just kind of divvy it up and compartmentalize, but I try to speak to the whole person, because we are whole people. We're whole bodies and whole spirits and whole minds. And sometimes that stuff gets fractured. Where the Black church comes in is there's no feeling like the feeling in the Black church. We have our things, we have our stuff. But at the end of the day, there's nothing like the feeling of the Black church. Reverend Dr. Breonna Parker says, I still believe in the Black church. And I echo that sentiment. I still believe the Black church has something to say. Yes. I believe that we are integral to the lives of Black people. And We have always been that. We've always been more than the church. We've been the meeting house and the schoolhouse and the voting spot. The church has been so many different things in the lives of Black people. And I think that we have to continue in that vein and even be more dynamic in that work. And so for me, especially during COVID, when I noticed that people were suffering, I became very vocal about my mental health journey and sharing with people that I believe we need Christ with a couch, that we
Yes.
need a prescription and a prescripture sometimes, that we
Yes.
need both. And I don't believe that God is insulted by that, because God created the therapist. God gave us all unique gifts to be used. And I don't think the therapist is exclusive of that. And so as I begin to share my journey, people begin to feel more comfortable coming forward and saying, hey, I need help. Can you refer somebody? And in that, we created a therapist in residence program where we have a therapist who is available via email. It's completely anonymous. I don't know who goes. She doesn't tell me anything, but they have these appointments with her. The first one is free. We pay for that as the church. And if people want to continue in treatment with her, they're welcome to do so. But I just didn't want money to be a reason that people weren't getting healthy or were not being whole. And if the church can't do that, then, what are we here for? We're not simply here to be a blessing to a person's soul. We have to speak to the whole person. That's what Jesus did. Jesus didn't go around just saving people. No, he gave them sight. He removed demons. He cast out demons. Jesus did all the whole work on the body, whether it was a foot, an eye, an ear, death. Jesus worked on the whole person. Jesus didn't pick and choose what part of the person. How many times did Jesus say, now go and be made whole?
Yes. Yes.
And the church should follow suit.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you for sharing that. So a couple things that I heard. You talked about your own journey during the pandemic, COVID pandemic, with your mental health, but you also modeled that for your congregants and those who are part of your ministries, and providing a service, because we know in the Black church, when it comes to us as Black people, when we are in a crisis, the first place we go to is the church.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so here it is. Now you've provided this therapist in the residence program at your church. So how can we help other churches with coming up and being creative to bridge the gap between faith and mental health at their own church?
Well, truly, your platform is one of the ways we help. We help by leaders in the mental health space and in the ministry space being vocal, letting people know that it is okay. We help by merging our ministries together like we're doing now.
Yeah.
And we help by letting people know that there's nothing wrong with getting help for mental health. There's absolutely not. I mean, you hear it all the time. If you had a problem with your foot, you'd see a podiatrist. A problem with your heart, you go to a cardiologist. The mind and the emotional well-being of a person should be the same way.
Right.
But the other thing is we have to work together to dispel the myth and the damage that the phrase, what happens in this house stays in this house, has done.
Yes.
That is horrible theology. And I say theology because it's become a theology.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
People believe in their hearts in Jesus' name that what happens in this house ought to stay in this house. And that's not so.
Yes.
We've done a lot of damage in that way. And I think we help dispel some of those things. I think we also have to dispel the notion that if you go to see a therapist, you're crazy. I have the opposite view. I say you might be a little bit crazy if you don't go see a therapist. I highly recommend that every pastor should have a therapist. Every pastor should have a pastor, and every pastor should have a therapist.
Yes.
And why? Because we are the keeper of the secrets.
Yes.
We know everything, to the point that you just made. When people have problems, the first place they come is to the church. And I think we talked about this before. Our role as pastor is not to be the superhero. Yes. We have to understand our limits. We have to know where our limits to counseling extend and where they don't.
Yes.
I am not a licensed counselor. I'm not a licensed therapist. I can counsel you to the best of my ability based on where I am, what I've learned, what I've known, what I've studied, what I know through the Bible. But then after that, I've got to be confident enough and non-ego driven enough to say, but let me refer you to someone who can help you better. I got you in the spiritual space. I can hold you down. I can do all those things. But when it comes to some of the mental practices, I don't have that. And I'm humble enough to say that and willing to say, yeah, but I got a friend. Her name's Dr. T.
Yes. Yes.
And you
Yeah.
may want to talk to her. I mean, even when I was going through and I was searching for a therapist, and let me just say this, and I want to say it publicly. I reached out to you over a year ago and said, Dr. T, I need a therapist. I'm not going to cry. I need a therapist. And you referred me to the most dynamic, amazing group of Black women therapists. And
Yes.
my therapist has been a staple for almost 2 years now. And she's amazing. And I absolutely adore her. And she has helped me. And I want to thank you for that, for being open to even referring me to somebody, because it has made all the difference in the world. It really, really has. And I thank you for that. And that's how we work together. That's how we work together.
Yes. Well, I thank you. And I thank you for your honesty. I thank you for your transparency, because it is my hope through this show. And, we have enlarged our territory of who we are ministering to through AMEZTV. So I hope somebody is hearing. You can have Jesus and a couch together. You can have a counselor and a therapist. And so let's go back to you, because I appreciate your honesty and transparency. Let's talk about other pastors and other clergy.
Sure.
We talk about the first place we go to is the church, but how do we help pastors and clergy understand it's okay to reach out for help? Because I think there's still a stigma, with pastors and clergy.
Right. Well, it's this idea that if I reach out to a therapist, I don't believe in Jesus. And couldn't be more wrong. Couldn't be more wrong. Even Jesus surrounded himself with a support system. Maybe he didn't need them always for mental support, but he did need a support system. When he was in the Garden of Gethsemane, the darkest hour of his life, and he's literally praying for his life, asking God. He's doing the prayer work. He's doing the spiritual work. He's bleeding. He's praying to the point where he's sweating drops of blood. He is doing the spiritual work. But what did he also do? He was like, y'all can sit with me for 1 hour? What is a therapist appointment but somebody sitting with you for 1 hour? Jesus set the precedence for what it is to need a mental health support.
That's right.
The Garden of Gethsemane. That's all we do is we just sit and we ask someone to sit with us for 1 hour. After we have prayed, after we have beseeched God, after we have asked God all the tough questions, then at some point the human side of me says, yeah, but I need a friend. The Beatles had a song, I get by with a little help from my friends. So Jesus set the model for us to say, yes, on the spiritual side, I'm discussing this with my Father. I'm asking for a solution, but in this body, in this space, I need my boys to just sit with me. He didn't ask them to pray with him. He just said, just sit with me for a little while. And honestly, anyone who's been in therapy, sometimes that's all you can do. Sometimes you don't have the capacity to talk. You don't have the capacity to share. You really are sometimes I just need somebody to sit with me for 1 hour. And I think if we look at it that way, pastors would be more free. If they say, well, Jesus did it too, pastors would be more free to exercise that. When John died, when he found out John the Baptist died, he retreated. He went away. That's what Healing for Healers was all about. We were expected in the time of COVID to come back to our churches and be Pastor 2.0, right? Meta pastors. We were expected to do all of these things, and we had never recovered from what happened. Because the reality is most of us were on the verge of breakdown before COVID. And then somehow we had to find this second wind to do the work. And then once COVID kind of was dying down, now we had to find a third wind to do this work, to return back to church. And something in me said, no, we're doing all this healing work, but who's healing the healers? And so it's get away. Jesus, when he got the news of John the Baptist dying, he got away. Now, he didn't get to retreat long before he met a group of people that needed his support, but he did get away. Jesus was really good at secluding and getting away. So I suggest that for pastors. I suggest therapy and help for pastors. I suggest getting a really good support system for pastors, not just people you bounce sermon ideas off of, but somebody who will just let you sit and be comfortable for a little while. And then I suggest that pastors really take the time to get away, to isolate without anybody else, not your spouse, not your children. Sometimes you just need a few days by yourself.
Absolutely. Thank you. And what I appreciate, and I hope everyone is hearing this, you're hearing from somebody who's sharing her own experience as a pastor. I sent you an article. Dr. Robert Rogers, who's pastor at a church in Morristown, New Jersey, rewrote an article. And we wrote an article on the stressors that Black pastors experience during the COVID pandemic, right? So it's real. We have data to support it. And here it is. You're talking about your own experience. And if I could help our listening audience kind of understand something a little bit. What we went through during the pandemic was a traumatic experience, right? So it's trauma. And so some people could have been experiencing what's called continuous traumatic stress during the time of the pandemic. So within it, people could be experiencing anxiety or depression, hopelessness, right? Isolation from their friends and family. But then that's the continuous traumatic stress. But we also have what's called post-traumatic stress. So right now, people say that we're post-COVID pandemic, but we are in a mental health pandemic right now, right? And then we also have some people that might be experiencing PTSD, but not only from the COVID pandemic, whatever other traumas they may have in their lives, the losses that they may have experienced, the grief and loss that they're experiencing, the loss of a job, that all culminates. And so that's why I love that we partner with clinicians and pastors and churches and mental health agencies to provide that support. Because whether it's pastors, and I'm going to use my metaphor with the Pepsi bottle, whether it's pastors or our congregants, I am dealing with, I lost my job, or I'm dealing financially. I got the trauma from the pandemic, right? I'm dealing with all of this race-based traumatic stress right now during the pandemic. What happens when we shake this Pepsi bottle? We take the lid off, it could explode. Yeah. And it could explode on your relationships with people that are close to, or if you hold it in, it's impacting you internally. So this is why I'm passionate about bridging the gap between faith and mental health, because you're right. Jesus asked the man at the pool of Bethesda, do you want to be made whole? Mm-hmm. Whole is mind, body, and spirit, right? Now I could imagine, you and I know this both, we're talking about this, but somebody will say, well, Dr. T, Pastor Tish, I don't need a therapist. I just need to pray more. I just need to pray harder. How would you respond to that?
I literally just had that conversation with someone, and they're like, I know, they literally said, I know that's the it thing to do. And I know, now everybody's talking about therapy, and, I know that, but I have prayer and I have God. And so I don't need anything else. Okay. I hear that. I don't agree with it for the reasons that I just suggested. If Jesus had sense enough to have a support system, why do we think we don't need one? Right. It just doesn't, it just doesn't make, I don't want to say that because I don't want to belittle anybody's thoughts around it.
Right.
But I do want to say, put it this way, it can't hurt you. Yeah. And so what I shared with the person was, okay, then just do it once.
Yes.
Because here's what I said, just do it once. And if it hurts you, don't do it again, because we believe, like the Hippocratic oath, do no harm. Right. If it hurts you, don't do it anymore, but just do it one time, just one time, because you'd be surprised. Sometimes one time is all people need. They just at that moment need to get some things off their chest.
Yes.
But we also know therapy is not easy work.
Yes.
I think sometimes, not all times, I don't want to paint with a broad brush here. I think sometimes people don't want to do therapy because therapists talk back. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We can talk to God, and that's true. Yep. And we wait for God and we wait for the answers. That's true. We don't always get an immediate answer from God, but a therapist is going to throw a question right back at you. Well, what do you think that means? Yes. But I'm wondering if you could look at it this way. A therapist is going to challenge you. And so sometimes when I hear, I don't want to go to therapy, what I hear is, I don't want to be challenged. I don't want to be made whole.
Yeah.
I don't want to face what I've been able to ignore all this time, because I think, oh God, I hope you'll have me back. I think people often mistake a feel-good feeling for healing.
Yes.
That maybe if I have a good shout, everything's going to be all right. Yeah, in that moment, and eventually, yes. But feel good doesn't mean fixed.
Yes. Yes. That's right.
And so people would rather feel good than fix it. But you can't fix what you won't face.
Yes.
And it's hard. It's very hard work. I'm not going to lie to anybody. When you're serious about it, it's hard work. I've walked out of therapy feeling a lot worse some days than I did better. But what it did was it caused me to sit, and it caused me to think. And can I say this? It made my talks with God better. Because guess what? Now I had questions for God.
Yes.
Now I had real dialogue with God. Like, wait a minute, Lord, because something popped up today that ain't sitting right in my spirit. So here's what we need to talk about today. Can you help me with this? Being in therapy made my prayer life better.
Yeah.
Because I was no longer coming to God with just surface stuff.
Yes.
I was coming to God with, hey, I'm super grateful, gratitude. I'm super this, but I'm also really hurt, God. And I need to be honest with that. Therapy helps you to be honest with some things. And so it's much easier to lie to myself.
Yeah.
It's much easier to shout and feel good for 15 minutes than it is to sit for 45 and wrestle with some of the stuff I've been dealing with. And so here's my other thing. And I'm not trying to mess up your platform. I'm really
no, this is why we're here. Yes.
Here's my challenge for people.
Okay.
If you believe in God, the way you say you believe in God, then what's the harm in therapy? If you believe that God can do everything that you say God can do, therapy, then why not?
Yes. Yes.
Because by saying I'm not going to therapy because I got God, in some ways translates to you think somehow therapy is going to diminish your relationship with God. Yes. But if you believe God is who God says God is, then therapy should be a drop in the bucket for you.
Absolutely.
You should be able to do it. Because at the end of the day, you believe God to be a healer, a way maker, a miracle worker, a mind regulator. If you believe God to be all those things, then therapy shouldn't be a hard thing for you to at least try.
Absolutely. I love it. It's wonderful. And I too agree. When people say I should just pray about it, yeah, I want you to pray about it. Have those conversations with God.
Absolutely.
However, those conversations might result that he's placing a trained professional right in front of you that is a part of the body. Right. So you know that what's that story where the man or the woman was on the island and said, I need to be saved. Yes. God sent a little tugboat and hey, do you want to ride so you can be saved? And the man said, no, that's okay. I'm waiting for God to come save me. He's with the ship. And hey, you want to be saved? No, I'm good. I'm waiting for God. Then he sent a helicopter. You want to be saved? No, I'm waiting for God. The island was flooded. And when he got to heaven, he said, Lord, I was waiting on you. And the Lord said, I gave you 3 answers. I said the tugboat, a ship, and a helicopter. So here's the thing. I believe in prayer. But I also believe that God, when you pray and you talk to God, he is going to send you a trained professional, somebody who is within the body of Christ. I also want to say my role as a clinician, as a professional counselor, I am to walk alongside you in your pain.
That's right.
But I am there to challenge you. But as I challenge you, I'm also there to support you. My role is to help you to grow. See, we as people, we are resilient. So that Pepsi bottle, remember, we can keep pushing and pushing and push down, but that stuff is still in your body. It still gets manifested physically with illness, right?
Yes.
So my job is to help shine a light on those dark crevices, to help you to heal from the inside out. My job is to help you to break up fallow ground and deal with that stuff in there, right?
Yes.
So we can go to the spa, we can go get our nails done, get our hair done, we're going to feel good. If you leave a counseling session and you don't feel good, that's when you know it's working.
Congratulations. It's working.
Yes, it's working. Lean into that because we are breaking some of that stuff up from below the surface. Right.
Whereas we talk about I'm into gardening now, which I absolutely adore. It's one of the things that brings me so much joy. And one of the things you have to do is what they call aerate the soil,
Yeah.
because it gets so hard under there that you're planting seed that can't break through because you have not aerated, you have not broken up
Oh, that's a sermon
ground.
right
So
there.
how are you sowing seed, but you won't break up soil?
Yes.
You have to break up the soil to sow the seed. That's how that works in order to have what? Growth.
Yes.
And in order to do what? Bloom.
Yes.
We don't want to just grow.
Yes.
It's not just about growing where you're planted. It's blooming where you're planted, because anything can grow by virtue of time. Things grow. Weeds grow. Did you ever notice you never have to work hard to find a weed? Weeds will just present themselves. Weeds are like our problems. You don't have to look for a problem, but blooms take time. But when a bloom shines, you can't even miss it. When a single rose among a whole patch of thicket pops up, you cannot miss it. And you can obviously see, wow, that rose went through a whole lot to bloom in this garden. And so that's what I want people to do. I don't want people to just be satisfied with growth. I want people to bloom, to be their best and brightest selves. And one thing that you said that if I may, I'd like to speak to is this whole idea of self-care. I do a lot. Wear a lot of hats, I do a lot of things, and I love them all. I have committed, and I may have even told you this. People are always like, oh my God, you're so busy. You must be tired. I'm like, yeah, I'm tired. I said, but I refuse to complain about the life I prayed for. This is the life I prayed for. I prayed to do this stuff. I prayed to be a pastor. I prayed to be able to preach and share God's word all over the world. Yeah, I'm tired. It comes with the gig. But at the same time, this is the life I prayed for. So I refuse to complain about that. But in that, my therapist is like, well, what are you doing for you? What is your self-care? Do you get manicures? Do you get massages? And do you know my philosophy on that? I was like, manicures and massages. I was like, that's maintenance.
Yes.
For me, that's maintenance. That's not self-care. Those are the things I would do for myself. No, those are things I have to do for myself. I remember when massages were a luxury, but when you travel as much as I do, massages are now mandatory. They're medicinal.
That's right. That's right.
At this point. But I say that to say that I was then challenged, though, because she would ask me and I was like, yeah, no, I'm really not. And I wasn't. So because I haven't really identified. Here's what I do know. Self-care for me means creating a life where self-care is not necessary. Self-care ought not be a one-off. Self-care shouldn't be an afterthought. Self-care should be a daily practice. And so when I began to think about it that way, where I want to live a life that's so proactive, self-care is not necessary. So massages can be fun again, all those kind of things. So I think it's living a life where you put things in place to make life easier for you. Can I tell you what self-care for me is?
What's that?
My Dunkin' Donuts app.
I love it.
Any app. Follow me on this. Any app that allows me to order things and just walk in and grab it and not stand on the line, that's self-care for me. And here's why it's self-care, because it gives me minutes that I otherwise would not have. That's 15 minutes of my life I have now gotten back just because I ordered my coffee online. For me, that's self-care. The Delta Lounge is self-care. The Delta Lounge for me is self-care because when I'm traveling, and I'm tired, especially after preaching, the last thing I want to do is have to sit someplace where it's crowded or it's loud. It allows me to sit in somewhere. Sometimes it's crowded and loud there too, but at least I get to just take a moment, grab some salad or some nice fruit, breathe for a second before I have to cramp myself back on this metal tin can. Things like that, things that make my life easier, convenient, comfortable. That's self-care for me. And I think that's what I want people to do when it comes to mental health. And we talk about self-care, really dig deep. My African spirituality practices are self-care for me. You know, I often say that's self-care for me. Just really sitting with God and meditating, all of that practice that started in COVID, because Lord was very clear, what got you here ain't going to get you there. You know, the way you've been practicing and dealing with me ain't going to get you through this. So we need to level up. So those things are self-care for me. Those things matter to me. And so I want to challenge everybody, pastor or otherwise, find out what self-care really is for you And if you do that deep dive, I'm sure you will come to see it's not just
Yep.
manicures and massages. It's a whole lot more.
Absolutely. I love it. I love it. Self-care is a whole lot more. And I just heard you talk about self-care as your alone time with God. So that means self-care should be part of our spiritual disciplines, right? And meditating and that quietness, right?
Absolutely. Because the answers come in the silence.
Yes, yes,
The
yes.
answers come in the silence.
Absolutely. And self-care, I think about this temple. We are a temple that God has created and crafted us and molded us, right? So then self-care should be a courageous act of justice.
Oh gosh, talk about it.
Taking care of that temple, right? Right. And so self-care is taking care of yourself, mind, body, and spirit. So here it is. Pastor Tish is talking about, she can come and help you from a spiritual perspective. You may have to go to a medical doctor for your physical perspective, but then you might need a clinician for your mental health. And we all have mental health. I want everyone to know that we all have mental health. A certain population has a diagnosable mental illness. A mental illness is something that is diagnosed by a trained professional, and there are criteria to meet that diagnosis, because I want to make that clear. Let's talk about the role, pastor, medical doctor, clinician. Let's talk about the ethics, because some pastors, they're not trained to be a medical doctor. They're not trained to be a clinician. So what are the ethical considerations that pastors and clergy should be considering in their role as a shepherd?
You want to know my ethical statement?
Yes.
I don't want anybody to die on my watch. Not on my watch is what I always say to myself.
Yes.
We are now called, as you indicated earlier, to serve people that we never thought we'd have to serve or never expected to have to serve in our congregations. The pandemic made us all mega churches, whether we wanted to be or not. We got no choice in that. And so our reach is now far beyond most of what any of our four walls can contain. And with that comes different people, different backgrounds, socioeconomic statuses, different lifestyles, all of those things. And I've made a decision. I don't want anybody to die on my watch. Meaning, and when I say die, I'm not just talking about physical death, because we know people will go, there are extremes people will take with their own lives. But spiritual death. Every time a pastor or a preacher comes to that desk, my godfather always told me, you straddle the line between life and death. It is serious when you stand there. Someone's going to choose life and someone's going to choose death. I don't want anybody to die on my watch because of something I said, because I wasn't emotionally intelligent, because I didn't say the things that needed to be said, because I turned a blind eye to the world in which we live and the things that are really facing us. I don't want anybody to feel worse because they encountered me or my preaching. And so for me, when it comes to ethics, I think that's what we have to keep in mind. Before we speak to someone, before we counsel someone, take a moment to assess and say, is this going to hurt or is this going to heal? And I think sometimes as pastors, we have this amazing, beautiful passion, this zealousness, where we just want everybody to be saved. And that's how it should be. We should feel like that. Like, I want everybody to love Jesus. I really do. Because Jesus is amazing. I love Jesus. I want everybody to know Jesus. However, there's a way to get people to do that. And beating them over the head or making them feel horrible because of decisions that they made is really not the way to do it. And I may have talked about this in the emotionally intelligent piece, but I always think about Jesus and the woman caught in adultery. She's, brought out. She's in front of the mob. They're like, we got to kill her. Jesus makes a very interesting move. He doesn't talk to them. He doesn't even say anything to her. He begins to draw or write in the sand No one knows what he drew. No one knows what he wrote. My imagination says, I feel like Jesus was counting the cost. I feel like Jesus, as my grandmother would say, was figuring. He was like, okay, hold on. I believe Jesus was doing one of those charts.
Yes.
Side with the woman, yes. Okay, then this is what's going to happen. Yep. Side with the mob, yes. Then this is what's going to happen. No, then this is. I feel like in my spirit that Jesus was taking a moment to count the cost of whatever he was about to say next. Jesus. That Jesus was like, what I say right now, the impact, because here's the thing, nobody dies on my watch. If I say the wrong thing, she could die. If I say the wrong thing, I could die before my time. If I say the wrong thing, someone in this crowd who could potentially follow me may not ever want to follow me. Hold on, let me take a beat and think this thing through.
Yep.
Got it.
Yep.
We without sin cast the first stone. Because now I'm not just going to talk about hers. Let's bring everybody's sin to the table.
Yes.
Everybody walks away. Woman, where are your accusers? And then Jesus says, now go and sin no more. Pay attention to what Jesus does. Jesus does something very human. He stops and counts the cost. He's Jesus. Jesus knows the outcome before the beginning, but he says, wait a minute, how I handle this matters in this moment. Lives are hanging in the balance, right? Hold on. My life, the mob's life, her life, everybody's life is everybody's life is hanging in the balance in this moment. And my next words are key to how this comes out. My next words are the key to the consequences of my decision right now. Yeah. And all was well. They walked away convicted, but not hurt. They walked away with some questions, some things to mull over. She walks away, sinning no more, alive. And Jesus lives to be Jesus another day. Everybody's satisfied in this equation. And I say this to say that's what we have to do. Ethically, we ought to pause for a second. Sometimes we got to take a beat. Even Elijah, God sends him to but he didn't send him to Nineveh. I know he said Jonah to Nineveh, but he sent him to another, I can't remember the place. But he sends him there. Yes. And he's like, I don't want to be with these. And he's angry. Ezekiel, excuse me. He's angry. He's like, but he says he sits with the people for 7 days. He just took a beat. Pause. Let me sit with these folks for 7 days. And then after he sat with them for 7 days, he was open to doing what the Lord has sent him to do in the first place. Imagine if he had not. Emotional intelligence says, sit with them, sit among them, watch them, see why God sent you here in the first place. Other than go over there, mad as heck, bleed on the people, take it out on them. And now they don't like you or God. Because why would God send this man to abuse us and to hurt us? Right. That's the lesson we all have to take ethically. Is what I'm about to say, do, or teach going to do more harm than good?
Yes, I love it. So is it going to hurt?
Or is it going
to heal? I got to count the cost. I think people need to understand, if you can't help them, at least don't hurt them.
At the very least, don't. If you can't, I said it all the time, you can't help, don't hurt.
That's
at the very least.
Yes. So what we're talking about really is there are 4 things that I will take from my training, from a psychological counseling training that we do with counselors, we do in training. The first thing is we want to increase self-awareness. We're doing that. We're helping people to understand and bridge the gap between faith and mental health. We're helping people to understand scriptures and theological foundations and how that connects with psychological foundations and counseling. We're giving them knowledge to help them make sense, right? Your feelings are real. Whoever is watching, and your feelings are real. Own your feelings. These are your feelings that you may be having are normal reactions to this extraordinary event you're dealing with, the trauma, the COVID pandemic, right? Yeah. You may be feeling something right now during this election period. Your feelings are real. So we're giving you knowledge. Now we talk about toolbox. What are toolbox? What can you have in your strategy in your toolbox? We all have toolbox. I just use this as an example. My toolbox, my physical toolbox in my house is downstairs in the garage, right? The handle on my refrigerator was loose. I really needed to go down and get a Phillips screwdriver, but I was too lazy. So I took a butter knife and I tried to. It just gave me a temporary fix. I got it again. I finally said, be intentional, go downstairs and get the right screwdriver. And my handle is tight. And I say that, everyone, is we can come up with temporary solutions, a Band-Aid approach. But at some point, you need to be intentional with your skills and utilize those techniques for internal healing. So it's really important, the awareness, knowledge, and skills, and just the relationship. And you talk about sometimes as a counselor, when I'm with my clients, we are not getting to the problem right away. Sometimes sitting and listening to gather the data of what's going on and putting this 10,000 piece puzzle of my client. Right? I want people to understand counseling is not a quick fix either. You can't expect something that's been going on for 20 years to be solved in 2 sessions. That's not going to work. Yeah.
Right. And that's why you can't shout it away.
Yes.
And please understand, I'm not negating the healing and miraculous power of God. I still believe in miracle signs and wonders. I do.
Yes.
However, and I also believe what you said. How do you know that the therapist is not the answer to your prayer?
Yeah.
How do you know? You don't know.
Yes.
But this is such a rich and wonderful conversation, and I do hope that people avail themselves to the work that you're doing, because this is so important, especially as we approach this election season.
Yes.
I put up a post the other day. I don't know if you saw it, but it was like me encouraging Black women in this season.
Yes.
Because if we were never under a microscope before, we are really under a microscope now, in that our, prayerfully, future president will be a Black woman.
Yes.
And so now it puts us under a microscope in a way that we've never been before.
Yeah.
And I just really want to remind all of us, Black people, to be kind to each other.
Yes.
To be kind to ourselves. To love ourselves is an act of revolution. It's an act of resistance, because everything on the opposing side does not want us to love ourselves. They're going to tell us everything is wrong with us. Yes. Our history, our hair, our hips, our hallelujah, everything is wrong with us. But this is the time where we lean into what we know to be true about us, that we are amazing, that we are super dope, we're strong, we're courageous. And I have something I've been working through and still working on, critical race theory and all, trying to erase us. Yes. But what we have, where critical race theories wants to erase us, I'm working on critical grace theory that affirms us. This grace that has kept us, even as the world has tried to erase us. Yes. And I don't want people to forget that grace. Yeah. Counseling, therapy is no replacement for the grace of God.
Yes.
Therapy and mental health stuff we can explain, but there are things that God does that we are inexplicable. We cannot explain them. Even doctors will tell you that, like, I don't know what this was. And all their diagnosis is, well, it was a miracle. It just is what it is. And so I want people to really understand that although we talk about mental health, we believe in God. Yes. I believe in the power of God. Yes. And I also believe in the wisdom of God. And wisdom says that we get help on this side.
Yes.
We're living, so much of what we preach and so much of what we talk about and believe is about a future hope.
Yes.
A future heaven.
Yes.
But can I tell you something? Heaven is a place on earth.
Yes.
Right now. I forgot. It was Belinda Carlisle. They said, "Ooh, baby, do you know what that's worth? Heaven is a place on earth. Heaven is right here." Was it David who said, "I would have fainted had I not believed in heaven here in the land of if I had not seen the grace of God here in the land of the living."
Yes.
I just botched that, but y'all know what I'm talking about. What I'm saying. But he was like, I'd have lost it if I didn't believe that there could be some hope and happiness here, right here on earth. And I want people to know that's available to us. It's right here, right now. If you want it, it's available to you.
Yeah.
Just as much as Christ's love is absolutely available to you. There's nothing you can do to shake it. I always say, God doesn't just love us. God is stalking us.
Yeah.
Like watching every move, counting our hairs and everything. We go together.
Yes.
And so, but therapy can be part of that journey. And it
Absolutely.
doesn't mean that you're in therapy forever. I've been in therapy for seasons.
Yes.
There are times when, but the thing that I'm learning now and have learned, I was doing therapy reactively. When something happened, then I searched for a therapist.
Okay.
Now I have learned I am using, I have a therapist proactively.
Yes.
There's a journey that I have been on for the last 20 years, and I've always sought a therapist when things got bad.
Yes.
This is the first time I've gone through the process with a therapist, and it's made a major difference.
Yeah.
Where I have said, okay, maybe I don't see you every week, but I need you. You are squad. So I need to know that when stuff is okay, no, I got to tag Dr. Such and Such in on this one. Hold on. Let me get her on the phone. Can you see me at such and such?
Yes.
And can I say this to all pastors? It's going to sound funny, but it's so true. My Tuesday at 4 is what gets me through Sunday at 11.
I love
Every
it.
pastor in the world knows what I just said.
That's exactly
Tuesday at 4 gets me through Sunday at 11. Somebody say
amen. Amen. Yes. Yes.
Because we need some place to put it. We cannot have all of this.
Yes.
All of what we take from and gladly.
Yes.
All of what we walk with all of what we walk through with our congregants through. The moments, I talk about this all the time. Preaching doesn't make me feel like a pastor.
Right.
Preaching, right. I'd do it on the A train if you let me.
Yes.
But pastoring, when people let you in to the most intimate moments of their life.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
But nobody has to do that. Mm-hmm. Nobody has to say, hey, my child is suffering. Can you help? Mm-hmm. Nobody has to say, my marriage is on the rocks. Will you come talk to us?
Right.
Nobody has to say, my dad passed away. Yeah. Can you come to the hospital and pray over him as he transitions? Right. No one has to give you that. It's such an honor.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
No.
But it's such a privilege, and nobody has to give you that.
That's right.
And so when we take all of that, it stays with us. The body holds it.
Yes.
And because we are now the keeper of it, we've got to let somebody else hold some of the other stuff.
That's right.
Because we don't share what our congregants give us to our therapist, which means our therapist has to hold our stuff.
That's right.
Because I can't hold your stuff and my stuff.
That's right.
So now, and I really want people to understand that's the love of a pastor.
That's right.
That I'm willing to give some of my stuff up to make room for yours.
Yeah.
And that's how therapy helps us.
Yes.
We don't forsake either one of them. We don't negate either one of them.
Yeah.
But there's a preciousness in that dynamic. There's something so beautiful in it. So preaching is not what makes me feel like a pastor.
Right.
It's those most intimate moments where people say, I'm suffering.
Yeah.
Will you not sit with me for 1 hour?
Yeah. Yeah. No, don't apologize. And I appreciate it. You know, as I was listening to you, we have this image we use in counseling. It says inside a therapist's heart, but I could also say inside a pastor's heart. So if everybody thinks about a heart, inside the heart is all of my congregants and clients' thoughts and feelings are welcome. I will do my best to sit with any suffering that my clients or my congregants share. Mm-hmm. I have to let go of expectations without giving up hope. I have great hope. This is all a part of your heart, right? Yeah. And I love it. As healers, as helpers, we know that burnout is real. We know that compassion fatigue is real. That is why even the counselor needs a counselor. That is why I love that you're talking and sharing about your therapy, because inside our heart, we're giving that away to our clients and congregants, but we also have to take care of ourselves. Right? And so that we come back to that whole idea of self-care.
That's it.
Yeah. So we have a few minutes left. I want to kind of share a few things that you said, and then ask you one kind of final question and get some final thoughts. One, you mentioned the election season, and this is for everyone. Race-based traumatic stress is real.
Oh, so real.
Microaggressions are real, whether it's based on race, gender, religion that we are hearing out there.
Yeah.
It is known that race-based traumatic stress, microaggressions, whether you are observing it or hearing it in the news or doom scrolling on social media, it can impact your mental health. So I would ask that everyone be aware that you have to take time out from what you're hearing from the racist, the sexist, all of those remarks out there. This is for everyone, especially during this time. Especially for women, I want you to kind of think about reimagining the strong Black woman. Now, when we talk about the strong Black woman, reimagine it's okay to get help. It is okay to take time away. It is okay for your own well-being and redefining that well-being. And so I have, as part of my Dr. T and Love and Basketball Ministries, I have a free webinar for anyone who's interested in just reimagining the strong Black woman.
Sure.
The other thing that Pastor Tish, I'm going to go back to the garden and irrigating the soil, right? When I was in seminary, we had to write a spiritual autobiography. And I thought it was going to be easy because I'm a counselor. It's all about self-awareness. And it was the most challenging piece of work that I have ever had to do beyond that dissertation.
Sure.
Because I had to realize that when God plants a seed in you and that he wants to grow it and transform it, but sometimes he might need you to go back and finish some unfinished business for that seed to be able to sprout. So thinking about your unfinished business is irrigating the soil. It's breaking up that soil. So if you are asking yourself the question, why, God, aren't you giving me this? Or why isn't this being birthed yet? I would also want you to say, what unfinished business do I need to finish to be able to grow and go to the next level?
Oh, yeah. So it's interesting. Oh, gosh, this is so funny. So it's interesting that you say that because I recently enlisted the help of a holistic doctor who's also a life coach. So when we talk about this whole wholeness, that's who she is. She's amazing. Her name is Dr. K. She's out of Atlanta. And Dr. K helps you on both fronts. And she's also super intuitive. So she also helps you spiritually. She's amazing. And so we had this initial conversation from the coaching standpoint. And I said, I know, I can feel it. I've been feeling it for a while. And the feeling is, the only way I can explain it is it's electric. I feel like the slide. I don't know what it is. I don't know what God's doing next, but I know it's something. And what I've been feeling in my spirit is, and you have to get ready for it. Even though I don't know what it is, I'm supposed to get ready for it. And we talked about that. And I said, I just feel like I'm like just this one thing away. I don't know what it is. I don't know what I'm supposed to do, but it's like this one thing away. And I can hear God saying, I just need you. I'm going to give you the perfect analogy for my Bible people. Rahab. I have a sermon to teach in a lesson called the Rahab Rehab. And Rahab was asked to do one simple thing to save her family. Hang a red cord outside of her window. That's it.
Right.
That to me is the craziest thing, right? I love this story because I'm like, she was not asked to sell her business. She was not asked to sacrifice anyone. She was not asked to hide more spies, make your house a safe house. All we need you to do is hang a crimson cord outside of your house.
Yes.
So that way, when we come through, your house and everything attached to you will be excluded from this thing, right? That's it.
Yes.
That is how I feel. I'm in this Rahab season where it's like, I just need you to do this one simple thing. But the one simple thing I know will have such great repercussions. That one little thing affected her whole family generationally.
Yeah.
Story we still talk about to this day. The plan outlasts the woman, right?
Right.
So this thing, And that's how I feel in my spirit. And she told me after a conversation, I gave her this really weird analogy, which I won't do on your platform. But she said, the one thing in the way is you. And I'm like, what? She's like, you're it. You're the one thing. And she said, you know what? She said, you're the kind of person I love working with most. She said, because there are people who have major things, major blockages that we've got to get through. Some things that they're paying trust tax for that have nothing to do with them. She said, but people like you, when it's just you, I just got to deal with you and the stuff that's blocking you. She said, oh, you're my favorite people to work with. We can get to work. We can do this. Right?
Yes.
And so I say to say, for me, the unfinished business is me. I literally just had this conversation. I am the unfinished business. There's something in me that needs to be broken up in order for the next thing to bloom. And again, I don't know what it is. And that's what I'm excited about. I do want to say this to people, because we get this as pastors. I'm sure you get it a lot as a mental health professional. I don't know what to do. I don't know what God is telling me to do. It's the I don't know. And this may be one of my next books.
Yeah.
There's a gift to I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know is a wonderful space to be in, especially when you're a believer in God, because I don't know means it could be anything.
Yes.
And so I love I don't know.
Yeah.
Because of my history with God and my track record with God, things have always worked out a bit better when I didn't know.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
And because God has blessed me so much, I don't worry about it, because God has just been that good to me.
That's
but
right.
I'm like, God ain't failed me yet. So I'm not going to start poking in. Our job, and as you indicated, is to we handle the periods and let God handle the question marks.
That's right. I love it.
I know I can do, I do. I know I can finish school. I know I can continue to serve my congregation. I know that I can continue to use the gift that God gave me in a wonderful way. I know that I can do the work to make my body, be a good steward of the body that God gave me to do this work. These are the things I know I can do. But the question marks, I don't have nothing to do with that. I love the space. I don't know, because God has not failed me in that. What I have to do is be responsible for the things that I can do. And that's where sometimes I get in the way. And so I got my unfinished business is me.
Yes.
And I know that, and I feel confident that even if I don't complete it all, I feel like I'm in this space where God says, I just need you to have enough faith to take that one step.
That's
in fact,
right.
you acknowledge that you're the problem, or we already halfway there.
Right.
So I would encourage people to just take the step. It's so cliche, but it's kind of, a lot of times it's get out of your own way. We know God, but we don't know God. God is a mystery. And I thank God for that, because if God was small enough to understand, God wouldn't be big enough to worship. I need a God I don't understand.
That's right. That's right.
Because my personality is made up of information. I'm an information person. I like information. That's who I am. That's how my makeup is. I can give you a fact on any little stupid thing in this world because I like information. And so for me, sometimes that trust is difficult because I want the answers. But can I tell you, the sin is not in questions. The sin is in the certainty. There's a great book by Peter Enns of the same title, The Sin of Certainty. Because if I know everything, where's God supposed to go?
That's exactly right.
And I don't want to know everything.
Right.
I still love the idea of mystery. That's one of the things I really don't like about social media. I like social media, but one of the drawbacks to social media is we've lost our sense of wonder. There are no more questions.
Right.
Things you want the answer to or never wanted to know in your life. Like you're like, you know what? If I never knew that, I'd be okay.
Right.
On social media, we share too much.
Right. Yep.
There's really no sense of wonder. That's why I feel really bad. My heart grieves sometimes for the generations coming behind us because there's no wonder.
Yeah.
Kids now know how to use phones at 2 years old. They can look up anything that they're reading earlier. They're learning sooner. They're processing things differently. And so the information for them comes like that.
Yeah.
Even if they can't wield it responsibly, they can still get it.
Yeah.
And I miss the days of kids finding a rock and being like, wow, what is this?
What is that? That's
Rather
exactly.
than being like, well, this is igneous. It comes from the volcanic such and such.
Yeah.
I
Yes.
don't want to
Yes.
say wow.
Yes.
It
Yes.
has to say the beauty and wonder. And guess
Yeah.
what? God still makes us wonder. I like that.
I love that. And that is a good place to kind of transition, because sometimes when you say, okay, I'm going to try this counseling, I want someone who looks like me, I want someone who integrates the spiritual and Christian perspective, but you may not know what it is that you're supposed to talk about. Let the counselor be on that journey with you.
Yeah.
And let's just find out what the wonder is of you coming there and trying to work on you. The reason you're coming is you. And so just get out of your own way. Come, counseling is confidential. It's private. We don't disclose unless we were concerned about someone. And just like Pastor Tish said, if you reach out to either one of us, we'll get you connected with anyone that you might need help with, or we'll get you to a person that can help you. The beauty of my role and being very involved in my profession, I know clinicians all throughout the world that I can help you and get you connected with, who are culturally competent, who integrate spiritual and Christian perspectives. So I just want to say thank you for sharing everything that you shared and this conversation on bridging the gap between faith and mental health. Thank you. Thank you. This is so good. We could go on and on.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me. And thank you for doing this work. It's so needed and it's greatly appreciated. God bless you. Thank you.
God bless you. So as we come to an end, I was saving I don't want to say the best for last, but the best. Pastor Tish has a book that came out in 2020, but she also has a new book. So tell the audience about your books, and then how can they connect with you on social media?
Okay, so my first book is called I See You, Sis, Inspirations from Heroic Women Hidden in Plain Sight. And it really is a compilation of some of the sermons that I've written about women and the subsequent Bible study lessons. And we are all women hidden in plain sight in some way, shape, or form. But my new book was actually birthed out of the space in the pandemic, because a fire pit saved my life. And I realized that nature is a place where I find God, and I love nature. I love the elements. It's one of the ways that I worship. When it comes to self-care, one of my self-care practices is what I call grounding, where I walk around my backyard in the grass with just barefoot. And I love it, love it. First thing I do is kick off my shoes and just walk around in the backyard. And when I began to think about all of those practices and how they spiritually helped me, I began to think about other people and really wanting to invite people into the space of honoring and enjoying the elements. And so my new book is a really small, cute devotional called Each Day with the Elements. And each day you spend time doing devotional work with a different element. So earth, fire, air, water, and spirit.
I love it. I love it. As soon as it comes out, I'm probably going to be the first one to get it.
I hope so. It's in its very, very, very final stage. I had to go back to the drawing board on one thing, but it's in its very, very final stages right now. It should be out soon. And if I might mention one more, I didn't realize. And for the holidays, last year I did a sermon for the holidays called How the Grief Stole Christmas. And I am putting that sermon into a book. So it'll be a short story, kind of Dr. Seuss style, on how the grief stole Christmas. So that'll be available during the holidays. I
love it. I love it. Congratulations. So website, Who's That Lady?
Who'sThatLadyMen.com. Instagram, Who's That.Lady, and on Facebook, the Who's That Lady group. So you can just go to Who's That Lady on demand on Facebook, and please join our group.
Absolutely. Wonderful. Pastor Tish, sis, I just want to give you a hug.
Virtual
hug, but I'm going to get it in real life, but real soon.
Right. That's right.
Thank you so much for being on, talking with Dr. T, being here with us on AME Zion TV. And I hope that someone here tonight was blessed. Anybody who's watching it later on, But if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us. So thank you, everyone, for joining us for Talking with Dr. T. I'm excited about our next couple episodes. In September, we have Reverend Dr. Paris Lee Smith Sr. He's a Black theologian and social conscious advocate. October, we have Dr. Laverne Haynes Collins, who is a minister and a professional counselor. And in November, we have Reverend Dr. Wayne Croft. And in December, we have Reverend Dr. Jerry Carter. So I hope you will join us in these next few months. And please spread the word, Talking with Dr. T, where we bridge the gap between faith and mental health. Conversations on faith and mental health. Thank you all.